Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases.
Hello, everyone. Glad you can join us tonight. Appreciate everybody being here. And of course, this is the Morning Watch crew. A little bit different presentation than what we normally have when Mrs. Steve is here on our regular early shows. But I want to thank everybody. And while you're in chat, absolutely remember to be respectful of families, mods, and each other. We'll be talking a lot tonight. It's as I was trying to research, and when you look at the Long Island serial homicides, I mean, you can just absolutely the whole world opens up to what the possibilities of this individual Rex Heuermann and his potential of what he could have done, and potential victims out there. And I believe that just recently another potential victim was found further north of the location of where the Gigolo 4 were found, and also the other 7. But when we look at these serial offenders, as we have to think about who was one of the most famous one, of course, and everybody, you think about over the years, Jack the Ripper probably has the most talked about and brings an image to everyone's mind about how evil these individuals are. And so as I was thinking about him today, and I thought, well, how many serial offenders are out there in our society? And one of the articles I saw, I think it's from a 2017, there was a scientist that put the number out there in the thousands. When I was during my training, and as the people came in and was giving us information from the FBI on, they always said that there's probably around 50, at that time, around 50 active serial offenders out there at any one moment, spread across the United States. And so if we go anywhere between the 50 and the thousands, still way too much evil that's out there, and we have to be absolutely aware of the potential of these individuals. But before we get too far into this, let's see who's in the house with us tonight. And that's Katrina. Good to see you. Annie, good. MK, Pamela, and Black Widow. Good to see you. Anna Lizette's here. Betty Blue, Gail Hurd. I can't get my Google machine to work. There we go. Let's see here. Tortisha is here. Call Me Kitty. Love that name. Alexander, Natalie Bell. Anna says it's 100 degrees in Idaho. It's amazing it's that hot in Idaho. And then Grace, Dwayne's Prospecting Adventures. Natalie Bell, I'm a little tipsy, but I'm here. Excellent. Susan Sell, good to see you. Copper Horse, as always, good to see you. Let's see here. Who else? Nanar, is good to see you. Mike, and going down through here. Julie La Rosa for Toronto. Susan, and Debbie, Lisa, and Call Me Kitty says, "Yay, I'm catching alive." Absolutely. Natalie says, "Ignore me. I'm half drunk, but I'm here." Um, Ironically, the morning watch in my career, I dealt with a lot of people that was in the same classification as what Natalie has just described herself as, half drunk. And you meet a lot of interesting people in the morning watch when you're out in the night, early morning hours, and when all the bars shut down. And as they migrate into the Waffle Houses, it's some very interesting people and good people. Some of them are good, hardworking people. But then again, you meet the occasional one that uh, have very interesting um, hobbies. All right. Let's see. Julie says, just woke up. Um, Steve, are you still drinking coffee this time? And I had a cup of coffee about an hour ago. Right now, I'm just drinking water. But and I may after the show go get another cup of coffee. Uh, Pie Girl's here. Good to see you. Uh, Debbie says, I imagine 2 a.m. is a busy time for law enforcement. Absolutely, it is. But anyway, like I said, of course, we dove into looking at a little bit about the Long Island offender, and then it struck a chord with me, and I wanted to see, for the fact there's a lot of things that law enforcement are going to be looking at. You know, they're trying to tie them in now. Atlantic City has a serial offender there, and oh, Black Widow. I see you're a little tipsy and raise your sheets. Thank you of your support for our intoxicated friends. Oh man, that's cute. All right, and Kelt's here. Good to see you. All right, but there's a lot of things that's going to be going on as they look at uh, the Long Island and looking at Rex and what is his potential, because all these Mrs. Steve and I were discussing, and she came to the realization during last night's show that all these victims were found um, 11, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, or longer on some of the older cases that were there was some dismemberment. But she really didn't put it all together that there we have this long extended time frame of were these victims that's in this certain geographically um, restricted area and where all these victims are, and that there's other dump sites across the country that possibly he may be involved in cities, and law enforcement's going to look at that. I think even Atlantic City has what was it, the East Side Strangler or something that they're looking at. Um, and let me see here. Um, because yes, I looked up and says how many serial offenders are in the United States, and one scientist in 2017 said that he believes it could be in the thousands. But some of the other possible was a smiley face, which is, you know, some people say it's an urban legend, and some say it's not. And regardless, are there certain offenders that might be copycats and be such a offender? Absolutely. Um, the Eastbound Strangler, I think, is the one outside of Atlantic City. And then, of course, we just, um, what was it, last week? Just a few weeks ago, they were talking about the Portland um, um, serial offender that 2 months ago, 3 months ago, they said these victims weren't related. And now they're looking at, and they said, yes, at least 4 of them are related. And, but one of the uh, strange names, and I've got to look into. the West Mesa bone collector. I just saw that as I was looking at active serial offenders that are out there, and that is a scary name, the West Mesa bone collector. Anything with bone collector in it would be something that would make you aware or make your skin crawl. All right. Let's see what else is going on in the chat before we get into here. See if anybody has a question. Betty Blue is drinking lemonade and ice water. Work. Let's see here. Lisa, Lisa is a latte abuser here. I mean, okay. And Natalie Bell, thank you for your support. Appreciate it. We're trying to get, got to talk with Chris tomorrow and see if I can't finalize for another trip. So we appreciate your support. Thank you. Oh, me. Heck, Death Hippie, good to see you. Let's see here. Let's see if anything, trying to keep caught up a little bit. Yeah, I just caught that name, and it was a list of active ones, um, and uh, I brought it up to the attention of, and I don't know anything about the case. I'm going to look into it for the fact that um, it was an extremely interesting name, and I'd never heard of it. But absolutely, if you have any links or any information on that case, of course, I'll do some research on it. But if you have anything handy, absolutely send me an email, Triple S. I appreciate it. Like I said, of all the names out there of the different types of serial offenders, I mean, you have Long Island serial offender, and then Smiley Face, Eastbound Strangler. Of course, is uh, pretty get your attention also. But the bone collector was something that I just found fascinating. Let's see here. Natalie Bell, bone collector. Yeah, not right. I love your channel. Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, anyone that's a bone collector. Um, Anna says, I wonder how many serial offenders start and stop and never get caught. Who might be ready to start up again if conditions are right? Yes, during those cooling off periods, and some offenders do. BTK was one that was outside what is normal as far as some of these offenders that he legitimately stopped for a while, and I think that was to raise his family. Um, Now, is that going to be true for Long Island? I don't know. I don't, um, you know, who knows? But we're going to find out pretty quick, I imagine. Hopefully, he steps up and cooperates with law enforcement, such as what BTK did. But you just never know. And if CSI has to work it from beginning to end and link and fight to connect every victim that they can, then of course we'll never know what the true number is, um, because we have so many of these offenders out there and so many of them that's been caught, and some of them were quite prolific in their life, and how many are in prison now, and what's the total and true number of the victims, and I mean it's just absolutely unbelievable. Susan Sell says, what will happen on Tuesday in court for the list subject? I have no idea. I thought you said phone collectors. No, it's bone. And like I said, I'd never heard of it. And when I saw it, I mean, that grabbed my attention as far as the West Mesa, and they found 11. And so I can't, I want to look into that and see and understand a little bit more about that. And it says apparently Rex Heuermann was ready to start again and reported that's why they expedited the arrest. That's possible that, because I read where he had come onto the radar uh, probably, what was it, June or even earlier than that of 2022. And so they'd been looking at him for over a year and doing the stuff for grand jury. And during that time, of course, he would have been under surveillance, and they would be seeing what contacts he made, what would they have him under all different types of communications and surveillance and keeping track of everything he did. Absolutely. Once law enforcement and a task force form, especially with the technologies they have now, they're going to know so much and everything, and they would be able to identify certain aspects of his behavior, and they would know his behavior and would be able to see whatever changes might be occurring, whatever steps that he might possibly be taking as far as prepping or making plans for his wife and family to possibly leave the country or leave town so that he would have privacy. There's a lot of things that we have to look at that possibly could be an indicator that he was taking the steps to once again find another victim. And so kudos to them for um, identifying him, and they most definitely saved lives. Kelt said that the Green River offender stopped after he met his second or third wife. Uh, I'll have to look into that. I can't remember much. You know, he was active for many, many years and was, you know, but I cannot remember what year that he stopped and how long it was, and would he have ever started up again? Um, because they always have that potential to start up again. I don't believe Rex ever stopped. This is from Katrina. I think he was also prowling, looking for his next target. I believe he had contact with the ladies a few times before he unalived them. That's extremely possible. Um, and we have, these people as they evolve and they learn and um, and how they could possibly cover their trails. That, of course, if upon the first contact, that every time you have a first contact with one and they become a victim, then of course that limits the potential for law enforcement um, as far as that. Oh, okay, this is who the one person that each of these individual contacted, and last person to see them, first time to see them, last person to see them. So law enforcement would have the ability to focus and narrow the scope down onto just that individual. But whereas if this is true, what Katrina says um, that he had several contacts with these victims before he unalived them, and they became victims of homicide, that um, then they just become one of the clients. But even within that, there's certain risks for the fact that um, when they do the victimologies on each of these women, that if they all have this at least one client that is the same, which he tried to control and conceal through his burner phones. Um, but you always have to be careful about with these individuals and recognize that they will take certain measures to hide their identity. But also, um, when they do this, what is what is the next step, and when will the next what triggers them to commit an act against this female, and what game are they playing during these encounters, and what triggers them at what moment to say, okay, tonight's the night. And hopefully we learn from each and every one of these offenders as they're caught. Oh, uh-oh. Grace has a sick dog. Uh, I understand Mrs. Steve uh, is in the same zone as you as far as caring for her dogs. She has four of them up there right now with her. One's on the floor and three in bed with her up there. But good night, and I hope your dog gets to feeling better. Uh, Babe, listen, I heard that Rex stopped when he was a maintenance worker at a hospital. That's um, that's possible. But like I say, you never know what is going to trigger them. Love to hunt. Good to see you. And Cop Horse says it's unimaginable how serial offenders can live a double life, go home, raise a family, but resist the urges to hurt their partners. It is. These people that live these double lives like that. Uh, and then when you see the families, such as with BTK, his daughter and his wife, and um, John Wayne Gacy, same thing with that family. And now we have this family that is, wife and um, child that um, absolutely are forever scarred by what they'll have to endure. Um, and, you know, we have to be very careful when we look at some of these, the extended family of these offenders, because, you know, everyone's a victim of these guys, their own family members, uh, because they'll serve almost the same penalties. They'll be under scrutiny. Um, there'll be so much harassment and accusations cast against them. And we see that in all these homicides, that the families are so easy to attack. And should we do that? No. Um, Not unless at some and when and if evidence ever comes up, then that's one thing. But, jumping to the natural conclusion, well, they had to know. Well, no, not necessarily. Think about your relationships and how people have been able to mislead you in certain aspects of your life, whether it be a relationship, business, or otherwise. You absolutely believed them, and then they just misled you, and then it took a long time, if ever, you realized it until someone stepped in and intervened and made you aware. So these people, these narcissistic liars and everybody else, they can be pretty convincing. Will Warren, good to see you. Let's see here. I hadn't heard that about that Rex. There's so much out there about so many of these cases, but I hadn't seen where he would have relations with morgue women. Yes, if if you go by the past history of what Anna brings up this point, and if this is true, and he had bought a bunch of burner phones, and the wife and kids were going on vacation, I could see where that would, knowing his past history, that would be a clue. Natalie Bell, thank you. That's very kind of you. Um, I wonder if we looked into RH's past, if we'd uncover this missing girl around 10 when he was pre-early teens in his childhood and within, yes, his orbit. Um, I don't know. Uh, Being in New York, it wouldn't surprise me because there's so many victims out there. And would it, and could he have possibly been involved in any of those? Hopefully, law enforcement will be able to look at that and uh, identify if that's true or not, or even if it's possible. Haley Bell, 499 super sticker. Appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Mrs. Steve not getting to use the blue light. She's asleep. A copper horse made mention of and tried to defend me at the best she could the other day that what happens on morning watch stays on morning watch. Mrs. Steve got a kick out of that. Nanar, is there an area near one of his homes where they have found some bodies? Not that I'm aware of, other than in New York. But uh, will they look at his accessibility and along the routes? Did he drive? And if he drove, and were there times where it was just him by himself uh, taking these trips? And what is his digital footprint? And what is the history of unsolved victims, missing persons, discovered victims that are located in similar or have the similar characteristics? They'll look at all of that. And on the eastern seaboard, of course, um, from New York all the way down to South Carolina, what's the potential of how many of those cities and those areas along the coastline where there are serial offenders and identified that, or they have victims and multiple victims that they suspect are the victims of this type of personality. I remember something in the news about of that, but I can't think of what the name of that family is. I don't know what my sticker said. Try again. I meant thank you. I don't know. That's all right. Oh, but that's funny. All right. Ann says, Mr. Steve, I have a side theory. Rex was feeling something was up around him, and law enforcement moved in to bring him in before he might um, self harm himself or flee to Iceland, and that doesn't like to extradite back to U.S. And that could be also. For the fact that, yes, you don't want to lose control of them, and especially if it's going to be something that could possibly have the potential of being a DP type uh, of justification, and him having to pay the ultimate price for his crimes, then absolutely they will try to get to those locations. Or I think simply Canada is also won't extradite if if DP is on the table, and I believe Mexico also. If it's on the table, the only way they will bring them back is if that's taken off the table. And Triple S says predators who target people in this vulnerable lifestyle don't, and everyone they come in contact with uh, doesn't commit homicides with, and they frequently have repeated interactions. But when there are no witnesses, of course, that's when they would and could strike. And there's a lot of truth in that, because if you have a witness, of course, you have to um, deal with a witness too, and then you have multiple victims from one scene. But and that happens also, but it does cloud the issue. And whereas if there is multiple encounters, that law enforcement would just be that you would just fall into a list of suspect names. But if your suspect name is in multiple list of clients uh, with each individual, then of course uh, that will put you on a short list. Yes, and yes, the dismemberment of some of those earlier ones, and is that just a learning phase, and that there's a lot of work to that, and it's far easier just whatever fantasies they have, or did he fulfill that, and or he was testing, trying, and to understand or do certain things, and he growed out of that, and there's so many different things that behavioral science units will look at that. Um, and did he evolve into what this ultimate offender is? Yes, there's so many possibilities. Um, Ann says that they frequently made trips to Iceland, and Iceland will probably look at their potential of victims there also. How long was he there? Did he ever make trips by himself? Or was it someplace that he didn't want to offend and was going to use that as a safe ground? Kelp became a YouTube member. Thank you, Kelp. Appreciate that. Appreciate all the support. Then the ritual becomes locked in burlap mesh and very specific location. Um, but once that location is found, if he's still active, now uh, where does he go? And is that going to be some of his hunting excursions, or other properties he knows of, other road surfaces that are have similarities of where this site is? That you have long, flat roads, so that if you are disposing of a victim at night, you can see headlights, and that you can travel down that road and see if there's any vehicles parked. And I don't know how often there's turnarounds, and so you can go in the opposite directions, possibly pre-scouting. I don't know. Uh, I've looked at that a little bit today on Google Earth, some of the road and some of the areas where the victims were, and of course, like I said, you can see headlights if you're trying to dispose of a victim in low light conditions, which I would expect. You know, you're not going to be able to do that in daylight. Uh, of you know, it's so easy to identify. So all these victims would have been disposed of at night in low light conditions. Says that he is deficient in his sexuality. Um, and that may be true, but mentally, whatever served him mentally, and because there's so many different ways that these individuals and they not always work for the fact that, and their reasons of committing these crimes is not always just from that aspect of it. There's other possibilities of why these offenders commit these crimes. Natalie. Yes, you never, Betty Blue says, yes, one never really knows someone, and that's absolutely correct. You have to be in a long term relationship, and you still get surprised every now and then, even on those long term. Yes, I don't know who and these individuals, you have different types of, you, Ted Bundy's victims, all of them, some of them could have been sisters. Um, and when we look at the Portland, same thing. A couple of them could be sisters. With these, who are and what roles do they play? Who knows? And what was their function as far as his fantasy? Um, and yes, they didn't look like his wife. Oh, I can imagine that if you were on a date with someone and they mentioned any similarity between you and John Wayne Gacy, um, yeah, that wouldn't be a very impressive conversation. Now, that's a conversation that Mrs. Steve and I might have, just discussing cases, because, like I said, if anyone ever heard uh, the discussions that Mrs. Steve and I had over coffee, ice cream, or supper, they would think that this is a dysfunctional family. That's an interesting concept, Anna, about what Dr. Ramsland describes, that the creeps have a cube personality. That whatever side of the cube is turned up. That's interesting. And yes, I agree that I would put him in the same class as the Green River. Misbehave. Hello, how are you? Good to see you. Katrina, do you still have his number? Ask him for a friend. Y'all, y'all are unreal. Oh, and that is interesting. That if you found, um, I'm, I have three phones. I carry three phones all the time. But Mrs. Steve pays for all my phones. I don't. Um, I've never had a burner phone, but that would be a clue if your spouse constantly, male or female, had a burner phone. What would be the reasoning behind that? Gail, yes, I believe law enforcement saves a lot of people with this arrest. Absolutely. And this is a good question also, where Boston Christian said, of course they are victims as well. So I pray God will bless and protect them. Wouldn't you wonder why your husband wasn't going on vacation again with the family? How often did he not go? And that's a good point, good question. Would he be saying that it's work related and that he's having to pay for the vacation and or that he's behind? Uh, and because there's a lot of ways people do that, and I don't know how long they were married, him and his wife or this current wife. Yeah, so you try and get caught up in chat and keep up with them. Uh-oh. Nightbot getting touchy. Nightbot be having emotional strife. Yes, love to hunt. I can't imagine what Rex's Huerman's wife is going through, um, because their relationship and they've been together forever, how many years, and then all of a sudden you find out that of what he's been doing, um, and that would be absolutely a blow to any relationship. And Will says, I wonder if he used burlap anywhere else so VICAP can hit or would be evolves to something new, especially after their found dumping ground. Yes, they would have looked at any way that he may have uh, restrained them, whatever type of materials used to camouflage them, which that was a interesting fact that some of the burlap camouflage and but all that stuff with VICAP would have been something that LE would and FBI would have noted. Nanar says, I have always lived on Long Island and was at beaches often. No one I knew ever went to Gilgo Beach. I passed the area often, but never thought about it. Um, yeah, I don't. I have no idea. I know that I don't know what the water temps are up there, and is it that due to parking that people didn't park there and go there, or is it due to road construction, um, and that it's or that the beach is uh, not safe to get access to? Because Mrs. Steve loves beaches, but she loves Florida beaches specifically. The wider, the better for Mrs. Steve. Yes. Now the old rule was that on the 30-mile circle, the old rule was 7 to 10 minutes or 7 to 10 miles, um, and I think he's just outside of that. But now we don't know when the victims and was it always and only when his wife was out of town, or were there other areas or possible um, properties that he may have had access to that haven't been discovered yet? But you're right. Certain offenders have a time clock that they won't be in a car, but for so long with them. Hello, Cynthia. Hannah has a good point. The volcanoes in Iceland could be very useful. Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, Triple S. It's possible, but there's also that. Why would he want to do that in a potential place? Whereas if he was seeking refuge, um, you know, that you wouldn't want to have that uh, facing you. Justice Jane, good to see you. Okay, he was a duck hunter also. Didn't know that. Knew he was a hunter and had a lot of guns. Um, I haven't. I saw where Boston Christian is talking about that possible body found. in Delphi today? I haven't heard that. Will says that this is fantasy sexually driven, and then of course it can be power. Um, it, I mean, there's so many different reasons, or just for profit. There's so many different reasons why these offenders do what they do. Ish Garza says, my aunt was married to a guy that turned out to be a serial offender. Jose Guerrero is true. You never know what they look like. Huh. I'll have to look that name up. Oh, man, that's funny. Love to Hunt says, yes, there was a body found by the railroad tracks, I think Franklin Street and Main Street. Was it natural or um, unknown? Is a burner phone a flip phone? I don't know. They can be all different kinds. Uh, I found one of my old Nokias. Mrs. Steve looked at that yesterday. I put that over there because Danger Dave was making fun of my bat phone over there, and I told him I'd found another phone. Yes, I have a smartphone. They were married 27 years. Yeah, and you would think that she would know everything about him, but that you don't. Or 25, 27, going back and forth. Yeah, wasn't there a movie made about one of the nurses that was a serial offender? Um, uh, I don't know if he's the one that they made it about or not. There's been several of those nurses that have been accused of that. Natalie Bell says, I have loads of phones, but I only use one. Richard Allen had loads of phones too. He never got rid of any of his phones. Cunningham, good to see you. And I agree, Anna, that if you were married to one of these creeps, and uh, and this had been going on, and without your knowledge or suspicions, or uh, you know, what do you do? I mean, your source of income is, if you're a uh, housewife and you're dependent upon that source of income. And I don't know um, if she had a job also, or if it was just totally him. It appears that they didn't take a lot of care of their house, but they had income to buy other properties, and you know, in South Carolina and in Vegas. Um, Mr. Steve, have you noticed any of us in the chat previously talking about the big storms that periodically hit the south shore of Long Island that would almost wash away a place like Gilgo Beach? You know, not in particular. I normally, the only time that I get to see chat or read chat is the morning watch. Whenever all my other shows, Mrs. Steve is doing that, and I just have the big screen, so I don't get to see a lot of the chat. But uh, if the and I could see, whereas if the victims were on the side of where the storm could get to them, that might be something that would contaminate or possibly uh, destroy evidence. Yes, VICAP. Oh snap, Sharon. that's, that's a good name. I think he hunted everything. Very possible. Hello, Karen. Good to see you. Yes, and I think this is the exact reason when you mentioned that it's absolutely dark, and um, it's a place whereas if you wanted to pace yourself in your vehicle and you're behind another vehicle, of course, or let a vehicle pass you by, that you would be able to easily pull over to the side and see a vehicle pull away from you and spot another vehicle approaching from a mile away, and you have that time frame to easily take a victim from the back of a vehicle 20 to 30 feet, especially if you're 6'4" and a big fellow and halfway in shape, that you would be able to carry them that distance in just a few seconds. Natalie says, I'm drunk. Natalie has gone from half to full now. I'm drunk. Jamie Hicks, good to see you. That's a shame, Anna, that they don't have the abilities to protect. Nat- Natalie just, oh, she's. I'm also offensive when I'm sober. Okay, Jose Guerrero was in Madera, California, 95 and 98, 3 victims. Okay, interesting. I've got to look that up. Natalie says that she knows her husband. If he ended up being a offender, she would be shocked. But I would expect, and hopefully, that most wives would be shocked. Now, occasionally, you do have a husband-wife team. I've seen it, and uh, actually knew of such a case of where a husband and wife did um, an abduction and a homicide. Terrible. Right on Josephine says, I wonder if those properties were for soft income, meaning rentals. I don't know. Probably one in Vegas may have been, something that would have been rental also, and for timeshare or otherwise. Yes, Katrina, forever, the children and the wife will always be under that cloud of suspicion and just another victim. Yes, I thought that's probably what you was at, if in that close to the sea that or ocean that has that potential. But I also, and I don't know, as far as here in Georgia, we have a lot of buzzards and other animals uh, alongside the, and I guess that I've never paid attention, um, and I've never seen a buzzard near any of the beaches. And I know it's a silly question, but aren't there buzzards and things on Long Island and in this area? Um, uh, I just never thought about it. But I've never thought about that. I've never seen a buzzard in Florida on the coastline. I've seen them inland, but not on the coastline. Yeah, Cunningham. Jeffrey Dahmer was a one unusual individual. So salt water would flood over the area, uh, and that's why you think they don't, or you don't think they were able to recover DNA from some of the remains. Okay. He says that I take it on Jose that he had other victims, but they just never had enough evidence for that. Those. He says I'm not a big drinker, more of a smoker. Oh man. Uh, Gilgo Beach, it just seems like some sand at the edge of the Ocean Parkway, not a real beach for laying in the sun. Um, and actually, for whatever reason, I never even thought to look at the beach side of it because I was looking over on the area of where the brush was on those inland canal or whatever type of access that the water came in there. Um, and Ann says, I keep harping on the geographic characteristics of the Gilgo Beach terrain because I think it's key to assessing accused perps operating modus operandi pattern. And that's fair to say, as far as he chose that for a reason. Um, and what was those reasons? We know he for at least four, and I think for the majority of the victims that are found and the majority of the victims that will be found. I think that there will be other victims found there. They just don't have them now. But I do believe that more victims will be found. Um, Mr. Steve, do you think his crimes were somehow tied to a cult? I haven't heard of that, and I don't know of that. Um, and I hadn't heard any rumors or seen anything of that. Yeah, the backside of that swampy marshland-like area with the pond waterways that I'm sure is brackish or just salt water cuts in behind. Black Widow says that um, we they have where they're at beautiful beaches in Ireland all around golden sand, but not the weather. Creeps that put bodies in mountains or bogs here. I saw a movie about some of those bogs, and there's um, they appeared that they would consume a body quite well. Oh, it's like a lagoon. Ann says that the on the other side is a South Oyster Bay. Yeah, well, whenever he made them phone calls taunting the family, that's of the using the victim's phone, but they'll be coming out in court and they'll be used against him. And it says that's never been to New York. I went to New York one time, and crazy city. If you never drove in New York, I advise you don't drive in New York. I've never seen anything like it, and don't drive there with the navigator I had. My navigator, this was pre um, uh, phone apps that had all the mapping and that would tell you 500 feet ahead, turn left, right, whatever. But because he was reading out of a foldable map, and after about the 10th or 11th time that he told me that, as he pointed behind us, that we need to turn back there, uh, I gave up on all confidence that he could get me anywhere. All righty, guys. Well, if y'all, the European bogs may swallow up bodies, but they get dug up thousands of years later when folks harvest peat moss. Yes, and that's a good point. That there may have been other victims, and there will be other victims. I absolutely believe will be found. Um, I don't think they've got them all. I really don't. But anyway, we've been here a little bit over an hour. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank everyone's support. It means a lot. And like I said, I don't know if I hadn't heard anything from Chris about if we're going to have a show or he's going to have a show tonight. But if he is and he wants me there, I'll be there. And I've got to talk to him because we're trying to get a trip going out west and look at some cases out there. And but y'all stay safe out there. We appreciate the mods. We appreciate everyone that watches. Give me a thumbs up, like the video, share it, subscribe, and we absolutely appreciate everyone for being here. And I'll see y'all soon, guys. Thank y'all.